Today, let's do a Martin comparison, but instead of cheap versus expensive, how about affordable versus a little bit less affordable? We're going to compare the D-X2E with the D-13E from the X series and the Rhodes series respectively, and put them to the test, so stick around. Hey, you're watching Alamo Music TV. My name is Chris McKee with Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. Turn on notifications, like our videos, and if you want to support the channel, visit our spring store link below for custom swag, and check out our podcast, The Fretboard Confessional, wherever you get your podcasts. So we've done a lot of these comparisons, and I actually did a recent comparison that's very similar to this. Look at the same series, but with a triple O. I'm like, well, let's see how it compares with the Dreadnought guitar. Dreadnoughts are very big guitars. They tend to have a lot of body resonance and projection because of the body size. And so sometimes I find that that can belie the differences between certain models to a certain extent. So today we're going to compare these two. The first one we're looking at, this is the D-X2E. This is part of Martin's X series, which has been around for a long time, produced in their Mexico facility, and we're comparing that to a D-13E, a newer model, but it's part of the Rhodes series. That series has been around for a bit and is also produced in their Mexico facility. So these two guitars actually have a lot more in common than they do different. Let's talk about the specs on this guitar and what it has in common with its stablemate, the D-13E. So this is the rosewood version of the D-X2E. I say that because you can get this with koa back and sides, rosewood, or mahogany, and also in a burst that has mahogany, if I recall correctly. Now, it features back and sides that are HPL. We've talked about that on our channel before. HPL stands for high pressure laminate. That means that this is not a laminate in the normal sense. So most guitars on the market that are not solid wood feature either a total laminate construction or laminate back and sides, where it's like a plywood. It's multiple layers of wood put together. This is not that. This is a material that is made with wood, but it is not layers of wood. And then the wood grain on it is basically silk screened onto it or printed onto it. This is not actual wood grain. Now, that makes this an affordable back and sides for them to make. It's interesting because Martin, as far as I know, manufactures this. It's also a very robust material. It's very difficult to scratch. It's very difficult to damage. It can be done. Don't put it to the test. But generally speaking, it's more robust. It holds up to wear more than solid back and sides definitely do. The finish on it tends to hold up better to wear than typical laminate does. So for a beginner's guitar, it's absolutely fantastic, and it works very well. I know a lot of players who've used X series guitars over the years for their gigs. Now on the front, we have a top of solid Sitka spruce that features scalloped bracing with solid tone bars. So it's kind of a mix of Martin's bracing styles, but the scallop bracing is intended to give you the structural rigidity you need while removing some material to make it more flexible, to give you some great tone from the top, because it's able to move a little bit more than if it was non-scalloped bracing. It features, this by the way is the same top and the same bracing that is on the D-13E. So one of the things right there, body shape, top, and bracing are the same between both guitars. Now, it features wood bridge and wood fingerboard. What wood? I don't know. It's select hardwood according to Martin. That means it could be laurel, it could be eucalyptus. It's basically a suitable wood for this purpose, for anchoring the strings to the top of the guitar, for feel, for workability, and for holding the frets onto the fingerboard. So they might use a few different species to do that, and that's why they're not specifying it on their website. It's perfectly fine, particularly for a guitar at this price point, which is under about $700 currently. Now, going up the fretboard, you've got your typical Martin headstock, chrome Martin tuners, and a solid neck. I talked about this in the last review. The X series used to have a artificial rich light fingerboard and then a neck made out of Stratobond, they called it, which was a layered laminate neck. It looked really cool. It was kind of heavy. It was difficult to work with if you ever had an issue with the guitar. So very cool looking. Had reasons to move away from it. I'm glad they did. And there's reasons they moved away from rich light on the fingerboard. I don't think it's because of people kind of complaining about it. I think it's because of cost. Rich light, believe it or not, is more expensive than, say, putting ebony or rosewood sometimes on a fingerboard. It works really well. It feels very solid. It holds the frets really well. About the only complaint I've ever heard against Richlite is sometimes it can be difficult to refret. Find a good luthier, and hopefully that's not going to be an issue. But that's basically what you get with the D-X2E. You do have a pickup. It's a Fishman MX pickup, pretty similar to most of the things available at this price point. You've got controls in the sound hole, volume and tone, and I prefer that to the side-mounted preamp, typically speaking. So just FYI. Also, if you're ever buying one of these and it's hanging up in a shop or something and you're going, hey, how come there's no in pin on it? That's because it's still in the gig bag. Martin ships the guitars that have an in pin either in the case or in the gig bag, so that should there be some kind of impact, because they're tapered, it wouldn't affect the guitar when it split the in block or anything like that. Sometimes we get questions, hey, where is that? That's missing. It's not. It's in the bag of the guitar. That's another difference between these guitars, by the way. They both come with gig bags. Martin calls the gig bag that the D-13 comes with their premium soft bag, and if you compare them, it is more premium. Both the thickness of the padding and the look and the material that's used for the outer shell is better. So let's take a look at the D-13E. Of course, one of the things you're going to see right off the bat is this shiny. That's right. It's got a full gloss body. So it features the same solid Sitka spruce top as the D-X2E that we were looking at. It's got the same bracing, scalloped X bracing with solid tone bars on it, but it's got some upgrades on the aesthetic front. So first of all, it's a gloss finish guitar. It's got a beautiful abalone rosette around there, nice black pickguard to go with it, and it's got a nice dark finished bridge and fingerboard. Not ebony, it's Richlite like I mentioned earlier. So it should wear very well. It should be nice and solid and do everything it's supposed to do. Now, going up the neck, I believe it's actually Sapele in this particular case. Nice feeling neck. They both feature the same neck profile and nut width, by the way, which is 1 3/4 inch nut width, and the high performance taper, low oval profile neck. That's been on a lot of Martin's guitars for a number of years because it's a very fast, very comfortable neck to play. You've got the same chrome Martin tuners. You've got a nice strap button. You've got a different type of end pin here. So you've got a strap button that's connected here, a 9-volt battery compartment, and your plug-in for the pickup. So it's an upgrade from the pickup on the D-X2E. It's easy to change the battery on. And as a bonus, in addition to your controls here, at the bottom of the sound hole, you have a tuner. So when you turn that on, you mute the output, and looking down through the sound hole under your strings, you can actually see the note that you're tuning to. It's pretty cool setup from Martin and Fishman, and it's just right here unobtrusively on both sides of the sound hole. So the back and sides are gloss Ziticote, or Ziticote, however you want to pronounce it. It's a beautiful tone wood. I tend to really like it. It has a lot of dark spider webby type grain patterns that can sometimes look very three-dimensional. Now this is using a fine veneer laminate back and sides, as opposed to the HPL that is on the X series. What does that mean? That means that's actually Ziticote that we're looking at on the back and the sides and on the inside of the guitar. So it's actual wood grain, and in the middle there's a filler. Now, not all laminates are made equally or the same. That filler can run parallel, it can run perpendicular, it can be a low quality wood, it can be a high quality wood. How it's made is a little bit different across the board. And some people will say laminate back and sides do nothing for the tone. They're all going to sound the same. Others say, I can hear the difference. I think that you can, depending upon how the laminate's made. And laminate construction has kind of gotten a bad rap, but it can be a very good choice for guitars. Even high-end guitars, in some use cases, could make use of laminate, depending upon what they're trying to accomplish with it. So, I'm a laminate apologist. Okay, I think it's a good choice depending upon what you're going with, but it won't be as resonant as an all solid wood guitar. So, like I said, 1 3/4 inch nut width, same neck profile. These should play the same. They should relatively sound the same but I think they sound different. So we're going to put them through the paces so you can hear for yourself. So put on some headphones or really good speakers and take a listen for yourself. Check it out. So there you have it. It's the Martin D-13E with Zitticote back and sides versus the Martin X Series D-X2E, in this case with Rosewood HPL on the back and sides. Could you hear a difference between them? I will tell you what I hear playing them. First of all, from a setup standpoint, this is set up better, the D-13E. Now, it's interesting to me because they're built in the same factory. They have the same nut profile or nut width. They have the same neck profile. This one plays differently. And so all of that, to me, comes down to the setup. So maybe because this is at a higher price point in the factory, they're taking a little bit more time on the setup, and that's not unprecedented. I remember learning that Yamaha guitars over a certain price point are getting a certain setup versus under a certain price point. So that happens in the industry. We know that is a thing. If you have a more expensive guitar, you expect it to play better than a lower price guitar. So there you have it. But let's talk about the tone. I think that was the most interesting aspect to me because between the two guitars, I found the D-X2E to be louder and thinner at the same time. And let me explain what I mean by that. It had more volume, but it was like all top. It was all string, so to speak. Like the top produces most of the sound of a guitar. Like 90% of the sound of the guitar comes from the top. Back and sides are there to build a resonating chamber, and depending upon the construction of the guitar, will resonate to color the sound, to EQ the guitar, if you will. With laminate construction, you know that that's not really going to happen at all or to a lesser extent. So you're really relying typically on the shape of the guitar. But this is an example where I think that the idea that laminates are all created equal really falls on its face, because this guitar is more resonant. It's not as resonant as an all solid wood Martin would be, but it definitely is more resonant than the HPL back and side D-X2E that we compared it to. So the D-X2E has a good sound to it. It's just the sound of kind of like all top, is the best way I can describe it. For me, I play a lot of guitars, and lower price guitars tend to have that. It tends to be that you're mostly hearing kind of a more immediate sound. Now, there's benefits to that. It tends to be a louder initial sound. Certainly to the player, it sounds like a louder guitar, but it's really just right there, kind of from the top. Now, over time, the top's solid. It's going to age. It's going to mellow. It's going to sound better on both of these guitars. With this, there was less volume, but there was more fullness, which is an interesting way of thinking about it. So quieter but full versus loud but thin. Not to say that either of these guitars is bad, but between the two of them, that's the biggest takeaway. This played better. It sounded quieter, but it sounded fuller. Between the two guitars, this is the one I would go with. Now, the difficult part of it is, even though these are both relatively affordable guitars from the standpoint of being Martin guitars, this one is twice the price of the X Series. So for twice the price, is it worth getting? For me, I would say yes. I would go for this guitar. If you can't afford the guitar, then the D-X2E is a really solid guitar. It plays really, really well. Even though the setup is not as good as this, and that can be changed, that can be adjusted. If you're primarily going to be plugging in, it's fantastic, and it has a pretty good sound to it on its own, minus the comparison with this guitar. But if you're looking at it, you want to upgrade, you're going to get a gloss body, you're going to get a better gig bag, you're going to get a better pickup, you're going to get that internal tuner, and to me, it plays and it sounds better. So all in all, definitely worth the upgrade if you can go with it. Hopefully this comparison was helpful to you. We often will do the cheap versus expensive, where it's like huge differences, a $600 guitar versus a $4,000 guitar. And one of the questions we're often faced with is this law of diminishing returns. At what point are you paying more and getting less per dollar of it? And it's really hard to define that. But I will say this comparison is where it makes the most sense almost across the board. Going from like a $600 guitar to like a $1,200 guitar is generally like leaps and bounds difference in feel and sound and setup and all of those things. And then kind of above a certain price point, whether it's electric or acoustic, then those differences begin to get a little bit less. So hopefully this was a helpful experiment for you, but I'd like to know your comments. below. So let me know what you think. Could you hear those differences? Do you own either one of these guitars? What are your thoughts? If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and like our videos. If you like information about either of these guitars, go to our website, alamomusic.com, and keep coming back for more. I'll see you next time.